we need to make sure that we're growing a crop that is profitable for the farmer. Because if the crop is not sustainably profitable, then we are not going to have that supply base in the future. And this is one of the big challenges I think the industry faces globally, is that we need to ensure that all of the financial metrics go back and start with the farmer.
That's Craig Carr from Carrfields, an agricultural company in New Zealand. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and today I'm going to talk to Craig Carr about the company that his father started over 40 years ago and how the family has grown the business to be one of the leading agricultural companies in New Zealand. Of course, we're going to talk about industrial hemp in the land of the Kiwis, but first a quick sponsor break and then a few nuggets of hemp news. This episode is brought to you in part by Americhanf, a full-service hemp building material installer. Committed to being mindful of environmental impacts and supporting local economies, Americhanf is the leading U.S. hempcrete installer, specializing in the e-Reezy spray-applied system. Find out how Americhanf can make your hempcrete dreams come true at americhanf.com. This episode is brought to you in part by All Walks Small Animal Hemp Bedding. All Walks is a lifestyle pet brand created by I&D Hemp to bring high-quality, sustainable hemp pet products to the pet store. Launched in March of 2022 at the Global Pet Expo with a third-place new product award, All Walks is now available on Amazon and is coming to a pet store near you soon. So ask your local pet stores to carry All Walks Hemp Bedding. You can learn more at allwalkspet.com. All Walks, hemp goods for a better path. All right, welcome back. So I've got a handful of hemp news nuggets for you this week. Here we are, smack dab in the middle of September 2022. This first story comes to us from businesscan.com. And it's a story out of Germany. It says that the German Cannabis Industry Association is reporting a raid by over 25 police officers on a farm that led to the confiscation of hemp products and the impounding of nearly 10 acres of hemp. This comes despite recent rulings in the German courts that acknowledge the legality of the country's long-established hemp industry. The police raid took place in the Schleswig-Holstein region on September 1st, after the Itzenhoe District Court ordered the confiscation of all industrial hemp goods from a farm belonging to the Tomesic family. However, the cultivation of industrial hemp has been legal in Germany since 1996, and a recent government commission acknowledged the legality of industrial hemp products. Dr. Stefan Meyer, president of the German Cannabis Industry Association, said if the Itzenhoe Public Prosecutor's Office were to prevail with their new legal opinion, the existence of the majority of the 863 farms in the hemp sector and numerous processing companies, and thus thousands of jobs nationwide, would be threatened. Das ist nicht gut. All right, this next story comes to us from Central America. This is on the Costa Rica News.com. And it says that regulations for the production of industrial hemp are established in Costa Rica. The story says that the Costa Rican Executive Power signed the first of regulations related to the use of hemp or non-psychoactive cannabis for food and industrial use. The hemp program will be administered by the Directorate of Agricultural Extension of the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, and there will be no cost associated with procuring a license to grow hemp in Costa Rica. These licenses will be granted for a period of 6 years and may be renewed for equal periods at the request of the authorized person and after demonstrating that they meet all the requirements and obligations established in the regulations. Esto es bueno. Here's a story I just found on rollingstone.com. It's written by Wayne Bell, and the headline reads, "Why Hemp is Entering the Mainstream and Adding Value to Businesses." It says that interest in hemp products, consumer and industrial, is growing significantly. I read the story and I think you should read it too, so I will put a link out there for you. But really, for me, this is a news nugget, not so much for what it has to say, but just for the fact that they're discussing industrial hemp as a value-added product for mainstream Americans in Rolling Stone magazine. All right, this next story comes to us from Alabama. I read about it on WTVY.com, News 4. It's a story about the National Hemp Growers Co-op and how they're partnering with Troy University. So I was going to read the story to you, but then I thought, wait a minute, I know someone at the National Hemp Growers Cooperative. I know Nick Walters, so let's call him up and he can be a primary source for this news story.
Hello, Nick Walters.
Hey, Nick. This is Eric Herlock up at the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing?
Eric, good morning. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, good morning to you. So I'm here doing the podcast right now, and I'm in the middle of the news nuggets section, and I'm talking about this story. It's about the National Hemp Growers Co-op partnering with Troy University in Alabama, and I was wondering if you could, tell us a little bit about that.
Heck yeah, I'll tell you about it. We're really excited about it. It's Troy University has a center for material sciences that they are beginning to do more and more research on polymers and plastics, particularly related to recyclable plastics. They have a huge plastics recycling facility that is located there in their town at Troy. It's the town and the university, right? Are both Troy.
Okay.
Those folks are always thinking about what are different uses of what we can use for plastics. They're already doing it right now, are doing the research. But what they're interested in is how could we put bioplastics, particularly those coming derived from hemp, into the mix of the things that they are already doing with recyclable plastics. And we're just excited about the different possibilities of what could come from learning basically how to put their chocolate in our peanut butter, right? How do we go put these two different chemically based, one natural, one not, coming together to do good things.
How did the partnership come together in the first place?
Well, it came together because our national coordinator who coordinates membership for us, Max Howell, used to be a football coach, and he coached at Troy University. Troy won a national Division II championship
Nice.
While Max was coaching, and Max just went into their Hall of Fame for their Sports Hall of Fame this past spring. So Max was visiting with the chancellor and talking more about, hey, I'm involved in this hemp co-op. And he said, hemp can be used in bioplastics. And the chancellor said, well, we just got a big grant to go put all of our their labs right now are scattered throughout the campus. So they're putting it all under one roof. He said, man, we ought to be doing more with, bioplastics in addition to all that. And so the spark took on from there that now has ended up with us signing this memorandum of understanding.
So what will the co-op's role be in this agreement?
Well, ultimately, what we want to do is shout Eureka with the recipe, right? There's some kind of a formula, but we don't want there to be a formula that is together just for good research for the sake of good research. So we believe one of the places where we can start really having a potential impact is with the automotive assembly world. Keep in mind, in 5 southeastern states, there are 16 different full automotive manufacturing facilities within that footprint, in addition to suppliers to those automotive manufacturers. So where might we be able to truly put in some bio-based plastics into that automotive world? So we start off by talking to the automotive assembly folks and saying, hey, look, we're trying to put together a formula here to really be able to go create XYZ ABC parts. Tell us what that would look like. We're able to go back then with this partnership with Troy University and be able to say, okay, let's come up with the formula. But we also have an opportunity because of 3 really great ag schools in Alabama, Alabama A&M, which is Alabama's 1890 HBCU, and then Auburn, and then Tuskegee, right? So farmer figures out, hey, what's the best way to grow? What's the best way to plant? What's the best way that, Troy and we figure out, okay, what's the right formula? And we know we got an offtake agreement going to XYZ company on the back end that's ready to buy it. We think it's a great, circle. And so the long answer to your short question, what would the co-op be doing? We'd be doing all of that, including what would be the actual production of whatever bio-based plastics that is being purchased by the automotive industry or anybody else. Look, we'll sell it to whoever it is is ready to check will clear the bank. But we want to start there just because we think that that's a great way to start.
Awesome. That sounds really exciting. Thank you for explaining it to me this morning.
Heck yeah, man. Call me anytime.
All right, I will. We'll talk to you later. Thanks, Nick.
All right, thanks.
So how about that? You can just call up Nick Walters right when you're doing the show. All right, so you know how I'm always talking about the paradigm shift, how we need to value something more than monetary wealth, and how the pursuit of short-term profits has systematically been destroying our planet? Well, I'm not alone in thinking this. This week, there's a great story in the New York Times about the founder of Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard, and how he is giving away the company because he sees it the way I do. I mean, granted, I don't have a billion-dollar company. I live paycheck to paycheck like most working class Americans, and I can barely afford to put new brakes on my 2012 Subaru. But anyway, that's beside the point. The story in the Times really explains well what he's doing and how he's doing it. So I just want to share a few quotes with you here, but I recommend you find the story and read it. So he says his actions hopefully will influence a new form of capitalism that doesn't end up with a few rich people and a bunch of poor people. We are going to give away the maximum amount of money to people who are actively working on saving this planet. So Patagonia is a privately held company, but he considered taking it public. But then he said, I don't respect the stock market at all. Once you're public, you've lost control over the company and you have to maximize profits for the shareholder, and then you become one of these irresponsible companies. Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so just one more thing before we get into my interview with Craig Carr from Carrfields in New Zealand. The USDA this week announced the recipients of the Climate Smart Commodities grant money. You know, there's like $3 billion up for grabs here, and there were 70 projects announced this week that are receiving grant money. There were a few familiar names on that list in the industrial hemp space, so congratulations to you all. You know who you are. I want to dig in on this in future episodes, so hopefully we'll set up some interviews with some of these grant recipients and we'll find out what they're going to use the money for. So I'll put a link to the list of grant recipients on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com, along with the links to all of these other news stories. So, okay, let's get into our interview. Craig Carr from Carrfields, a New Zealand agriculture company that is also pioneering the hemp industry in the land of the Kiwis. Welcome, Craig. Good morning to you. I know you're about 16 hours into the future, and it's Tuesday morning for you, but it's still Monday afternoon for me. So don't tell me anything about the future, Craig. I don't want to disrupt the space-time continuum, but I really want to hear about hemp in New Zealand and about Carrfields. So welcome. Wonder if you could give us a short introduction.
Yeah, good morning, Eric. Great to be on the call this morning. It's a nice sort of crisp spring morning here in New Zealand. So yeah, it's great to connect with you guys, and it was good to meet you a few weeks ago in Montana when I was there. So yeah look, I'm Craig Carr. I'm the group MD for our family business, Carrfields. Carrfields was started by my parents in the sort of, 40 odd years ago. My dad started as an apprentice mechanic and working in farm machinery from a farming background, and had a real strong desire to get back into farming after his apprenticeship. And to enable him to get onto the land, he bought started contracting baling hay and straw for local farmers, and picked up sort of several straw contracts, and that sort of led him then into farm machinery in sort of the early 90s. And for him and my mother, it was pretty much farming contracting through the summer and selling machineries, through the winter, and building a really good sort of machinery service business that, really gave great service to local farmers and contractors in the region.
Yeah.
And it was sort of in the mid-90s that I joined the business. At that stage, I got involved in a new business that my father had bought in seed, and that got me involved in seed processing and starting to understand seed. I had a couple of brothers also join the business a few years later. One went on to our farming business, and then the other into our contracting business. And so through 2000, it was my dad and my two brothers and myself were really starting to grow out our agribusiness. And it was a big time in New Zealand of change of farming. Dairy was really starting to grow. And we'd been traditionally in our region of Canterbury in the South Island, we'd been a, sort of mixed farming operation where we were growing, arable crops, farming, livestock, etc. And so dairy really grew through the 2000s, and with that, our business grew also.
Okay.
We got involved in animal feed and nutrition, and then into 2014, we acquired Elders New Zealand, and Elders New Zealand sort of enabled us to become more a national business. We were already at that stage through our seed business, exporting to sort of 40 countries around the world. We had 150 people in 2014, and at merger with Elders New Zealand, we sort of went to sort of 350, 400 people. But that took us, as I said, to be a national business, got us involved in livestock farming and also wool. And it was really through our wool business and then through our machinery business, how we got introduced to hemp in 2018 when we were asked to build a combine harvester front that could harvest the fiber and harvest the grain. And through our wool business, we also owned a large, textile mill in New Zealand that makes carpet yarns. And so we had a number of components in that factory that were really suitable for starting to think about, another natural product being hemp and hemp fiber. So by 2020, just as we went into COVID, alongside Hemp Farm New Zealand, we had ordered the first decorticator that really was coming into Australasia. And through Carrfields' expertise of those sort of 40 odd years that I sort of just talked through, it really enabled us to bring together a sort of hemp value chain through, understanding seeds, understanding how we grow seeds and crops, to how we harvest through our contracting business and how we develop machinery through our machinery business. But more importantly, how we link that into our textile mill of wool, and making now into decorticating, hemp fiber and putting that into, sort of future products. So yeah, it's been an exciting sort of 25 plus years since I've been involved in the business, and really sort of super excited about the hemp fiber industry, not only in New Zealand, but globally. And so it was really great to get up to the US and see what, the US hemp industry is also doing. So that's a little bit about our story, Eric.
Can you talk a bit about sort of the development of the hemp industry in New Zealand?
Yeah, actually, I first got involved in hemp probably 20 odd years ago when I was in the seed industry, cleaning seed. So another local New Zealand company was, had a oil seeds business and was starting to grow hemp for food oil. And so we actually did get involved in hemp way back then. And it was obviously very small volumes that were growing. And one of the big challenges we were faced with, or we saw, was back then was a number of varieties being very tall, very fibrous. And because we sell the majority of combine harvesters in New Zealand, in those early days of hemp farming, there was a number of farmers that, had a lot of issues in harvesting hemp fiber. And in the old case, combines actually burnt down. And so Hemp had quite a bit of a slow start. Again, quite a boutique sort of product with oils.
Mm-hmm.
And fiber was really, no one was really doing anything with fiber. I mean, it was just chopped up or it was burned to the field. And then I suppose in more recent times, probably, getting back into the sort of, 2015, 16, 17, 18, as industrial hemp regulations and a few things started to change, more players in New Zealand started to get involved, but it was mainly at the food level, so producing for oil or for hemp flours and hemp protein products, not for the fiber. And so really from our perspective, when we got to know about our partner, we got to meet Hemp New Zealand, who had a vision to bring in fiber industry to New Zealand, and the work that we were doing together and trying to develop this combined front. It just seemed like it was something that we should really learn more about. And so once you started to look into hemp fiber and the opportunity for hemp fiber and where hemp fiber could actually go in not only a country of New Zealand, but globally, it became quite exciting to start to think about how do we build this, sort of low carbon supply chain? How do we start thinking about developing a product-based strategy for hemp fiber? And and what do we need to know and who do we need to work with to enable that to happen? And so for me personally, again, as I said, knew a little bit about the hemp industry, but really it's been the last few years that I've really understood the potential and the opportunity.
Right. You mentioned the trip to Montana a few weeks ago. What were some of the main takeaways for you?
Yeah, look, it was a really good few days. I think what impressed me was the passion of the people that were there. From right across the US and North America. So that was something that I really saw, and people who really wanted to make a difference. And so, the I&D family behind that operation, it's, incredibly, they must be incredibly proud of what they've created. And they've put a lot of investment in.
Yeah.
But for me, what I came away with was feeling, hey, look, we've been through some of the challenges they're going through. We've learned a lot of things as well. And so similar things that they've learned, we've also learned. But what again probably stood out to me the most was the willingness of them of the I&D business and others to actually work together for the benefit of the industry.
Right.
And for the ability for us, even though we're way down here in New Zealand, there's a huge opportunity for us to share learnings and to actually share information around what has worked, what hasn't worked. Because when you're dealing with a product like hemp, and particularly hemp fiber, you're very reliant, as most people will know, on Mother Nature. And so the process of retting, the process of getting a consistent product that you can present to your decortication mill is extremely important. And so for me, when it's summer up there, it's winter down here, and so we have an opportunity to further work together closer to really speed up how we improve, how do we develop this industry more, how do we share learnings. And so for me, the real things that stood out were significant investments going into the industry. There's significant passion by a number of players, and there's a real willingness to sort of work together for the benefit of the wider industry in the world. So to me, they were sort of key takeaways.
You mentioned that some 20 years ago you were working with some folks who were growing hemp for seed. So I'm assuming industrial hemp has been legal in New Zealand for a lot longer than it's been legal here in the US. Is that right?
Yeah, look, I can't speak to all of the exact rule changes or the regulations, but obviously, yes, there has been the ability for people to grow hemp. Obviously, today in New Zealand, when we grow hemp, our farmers have to go through a protocol to do that. We have to, at the moment, have officially logged the field. We have rules around where that field can be placed on a farmer's farm. We have police vetting and checking that needs to go on. And so, and testing obviously of the product through different stages. So there is still some protocol. It's not majorly onerous, but there is protocol in place. But yeah, I mean, right now, if people do want to grow industrial hemp, it's just a few boxes that we need to tick and some protocols that we need to follow. So it's certainly probably come a long way. But as I said, talking to the history of the last 20 years, I can't really talk to the exact policies and regulations on that.
Sure. Okay. Here in the U.S., there's still a big challenge with hemp seed as an animal feed, for livestock. You're able to feed hemp to your children, but not to your, herd of Angus cattle. Is hemp seed a viable livestock feed down there in New Zealand?
Yeah, look, I think we're going through the same challenges that you are. I mean, ultimately, hemp can be grown for food. It can be processed into oils or protein powders and can be consumed by people. But the byproduct of the process cannot be put into the animal feed supply chain. So that is a big challenge for us in New Zealand also. And I also think potentially, I think it is in Australia as well. And, that really does limit how the food business continue to grow, because if you can't move your byproduct into another market, then it's really hard to grow demand. The grain market in New Zealand is very small. I mean, remembering we're only 5 million people in New Zealand, so hemp is still relatively a new food product to people.
Sure.
People are still getting to understand what hemp is. For us, we desperately need those changes to take place as well, so that we have further markets to put our hemp byproducts into. And I think that's definitely a work in progress. I know it's on the agenda for our hemp industry in New Zealand, and there's a number of companies working on this to really try and push this forward and make this happen, because it needs to happen. It's a great product. It'd be great to go into the animal feed industry, but at the moment it's not allowed.
Right. As far as farmers' interest in growing hemp, are they generally receptive to it, or do you still sort of bump up against the marijuana stigma?
No, look, I think farmers are receptive to trying new things. I think from our perspective, we've always started with the end game in mind, that we need to make sure that we're growing a crop that is profitable for the farmer. Because if the crop is not profitable or is not sustainably profitable, then we are not going to have that supply base in the future. And this is one of the big challenges I think the industry faces globally, is that we need to ensure that that all of the financial metrics go back and start with the farmer.
Amen to that.
And of course, when you're dealing with farming, you're dealing with Mother Nature, and there's a whole lot of challenges Mother Nature throws at you. So from our perspective, we very much started with the view that we needed to be competitive. Where we're based in the arable hub of New Zealand, in the Canterbury region. It's known for producing, a wide range of small seeds, carrot seeds, radish seeds, pea seeds, ryegrass, clover seeds. And we've got, exceptional land, and we have, really good access to water. But, our land is sort of 50,000 New Zealand dollars a hectare, which, probably circa 35,000 US dollars a hectare. So there's a large investment in the land. There's a large investment in the capital cost to be able to farm. And so we have to start this off where the farmer will grow hemp fiber and actually make a sustainable return off that investment that they have. And so farmers will grow it, but farmers are also business people. They need to make sure that it works for them. And so we're very much focused on ensuring that it does do that, and through our R&D team in the field, looking at new genetics that can produce high yields of herd or fibre, or better ways to grow the crop. Obviously, hemp has a far lower input cost than a lot of other crops, which is really, quite significant.
Sure.
So we see a lot of advantages in growing hemp. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of exact data out there that talks about, exactly what growing hemp does to the soil and all of those sorts of things. But that's something on our radar, and something as a business that we're really conscious that we want to develop, is better facts and data around growing hemp and the benefits of growing hemp, and what that can be in the farming rotation. So, so again, yes, we can get farmers to grow it, but it has to be commercial, it has to be profitable, and they want to know long term that they're going to be able to grow those crops every year. And so for us, it's about building that sustainable supply chain, that ultimately our customers buying the hemp products know that they're going to get their products next year as well, because it is sustainable, and it's sustainable for everyone in the supply chain, and everyone wins in that supply chain.
I imagine sustainability is just a very important concept for you all down there, and how it relates to the climate crisis. Here in the U.S., climate change seems to be a political topic, and, it's just very bizarre how some people don't believe it's happening, other people do believe it's happening, and it's just this sort of messy political situation. Do you have anything like that down there in New Zealand?
Yeah, look, certainly we have a massive pressure on climate change issues. And I mean, obviously, like a lot of other countries around the world have signed up to the Paris Accord, and we have got carbon commitments, or carbon emission commitments or reductions that we need to work to. And so we've seen here in New Zealand this topic become, again, quite political. But, and quite challenging for a lot of people, because we're seeing a lot of land be purchased from overseas by overseas investors who actually are allowed to buy the land to plant it in trees. New Zealand has a big commitment to meeting its obligations, and therefore one of the major ways we can meet them is by converting farmland into trees. And so there's been a lot of beautiful sheep and beef farmland bought in New Zealand, and is being put into trees right now, which for a lot of people is quite sad to see, because that doesn't actually help rural communities. It doesn't help longer term in food supply. So there's a lot of emotion around it, and there's a lot of people that don't truly understand it. And even myself, I don't profess to understand all of these technical carbon matters, but I feel we could have, as a country, done a much better job and precision placing trees in areas where really trees work. I just it's really sad to see great farmland be taken, and that's been in family farming businesses for generations, and it's sold to go into forestry because it's actually a better return, and someone can invest some money from overseas into New Zealand, and it can seek some carbon credits and do what it needs to do. But so definitely a real challenge. But on the other hand, I'm a seriously also a believer that climate change is real, and we have had in New Zealand in the last 12 months, we've probably had 3 and 100-year floods. We had a harvest that a wet harvest which destroyed a lot of seed crops in February this year, which I've never seen in my 25 years of the seed industry. And I've done a lot of travel in the last 6 months with borders opening up. I was in India visiting our team in India, and it was 49 degrees when I landed in Delhi. And then I was in France in early May, and I could already tell then that the French were going to be heading into a really dry, poor harvest with the lack of rain. And so the world has actually, experienced significant climate events that is happening for some reason, and we actually have to think better and smarter as businesses, as consumers, and actually make some change to more sustainable ways of doing things. And so that's probably got me even more interested really in the role that hemp can play, and helping solve some of these world challenges.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a shame about the taking the farmland away from the farmers and planting it in trees, because I think agriculture could do, a world of good for climate change mitigation. Like hemp is sort of a symbol of that, right? Like I think we could be sequestering a lot of carbon with sort of big scale agriculture. But that's fascinating too, that you have like a political sort of issues around climate change, but it's not, whether or not climate change is real, but it seems like it's how to deal with the reality of climate change. That's fascinating to me. You mentioned earlier too about the dairy industry was growing, over the past few decades. Is that still the case? Is there still a lot of dairy farming happening down there?
Yeah, no, Eric, our dairy industry has certainly grown significantly over the last 20 years, but with a lot of environmental sustainability regulations coming into play, we have certainly seen, the dairy growth sort of plateau.
Okay, right.
I mean, dairy farming has been an extremely profitable farming option for many farmers, and they've grown significantly through the growth of the dairy industry. And over the last few years, it probably had some record years in terms of milk pricing. But there's big awareness now around nitrates. There's a big awareness now around waterways, and the dairy industry has certainly been taking a lot of I suppose pressure from environmental lobby groups to say, hey, you need to tidy up, you need to be better, and look, New Zealand has come a long way. I mean, we I'm out with farmers all the time, and farmers always want what's best for the land, and they actually want to improve. They want to do things better. They just need to be shown how, and so there's been a massive commitment by the dairy industry in New Zealand to really be excellent, and that's developed right through the companies that are promoting those products globally. They're wanting to have really good sustainable on-farm practices. They want to see good traceability, good quality, because New Zealand produces a huge amount of food, both milk protein and red meat protein, horticultural crops, where we've got we're highly recognized on the global stage, and so we want to continue on that journey. And there's been significant pressure on environmental and sustainable practices on farm. I think it's only a good thing. I mean, it just keeps us all on our game, because New Zealand, as I said, has a most wonderful opportunity, in my view, in the world to take our products to another level. Yeah, the
reason I ask about dairy is, so I live in Pennsylvania, which is on the east coast of the U.S., and traditionally had been, a dairy area. When I grew up here, however long ago, back in the 80s, that you could throw a rock and hit a dairy cow. There was just dairy cows everywhere. But over the course of my life, dairy here in Pennsylvania, it's just gotten increasingly hard to make a living from that. So you've seen, the small farms with, 20, 30, 50 cows sort of get swallowed up. There's great big dairy producers out in the western U.S. that make it really hard for the small family farms here in Pennsylvania to make a go of it. It's like the government sets the prices. It's somehow more expensive to run a dairy farm. Like you're not making enough money selling the milk. It's just kind of a bad situation here. So I look to industrial hemp as this, sort of beacon of hope for farmers. So anyway, well, Craig, I do want to offer my condolences to you at the recent passing of your queen. I know she's sort of the head of the Commonwealth, so I don't know how meaningful that is to you, but sort of shocking news for us here in the U.S.
Oh no, thank you. I mean, it's certainly, I think for a lot of people in New Zealand and in the Commonwealth or around the world even, probably never thought the Queen would die. She seemed to have gone on for a big part of most people's lives, and so we've been fortunate to have her down in New Zealand several times. And I know a lot of New Zealanders always sort of have headed back to the UK and have always, connected with the royal family, whether it's going to Buckingham Palace or
Sure.
Balmoral Castle, and sort of reconnecting with our roots. But look, I mean, she's lived a great life, and she's done, she's committed a huge amount to of her life to the people of the Commonwealth, and so. Yeah, I mean, I think we just have to salute her for the wonderful effort and commitment that she's made.
I think here in the U.S., maybe one of the most famous New Zealanders is Peter Jackson, right? The film director from the Lord of the Rings, and more recently the Beatles documentary. And I wasn't sure about Peter Jackson after the Hobbit trilogy, right? I was sort of like not okay with that rendition of that, but he's made it up to me with this Beatles documentary. So it's a small country, so I assume you know him. So when you see him at the pub, tell him thanks for me.
Yeah, well, it is a small country, but it's not that small. We don't drink at the same pub, but no, again, really proud of what Peter Jackson has done and capturing the beauty of New Zealand. Not far from where we live was the opening scene of the second movie of Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
And so as Kiwis, we live in much of what was filmed right across New Zealand, and so really proud that someone like Peter Jackson back then had the vision to bring that to New Zealand and portray New Zealand to the world. And I know when I do talk to a lot of people around the world, sometimes they don't know where New Zealand is, but when you say Lord of the Rings, they all connect. And so, again, there's some really great stuff coming out of New Zealand. New Zealanders have always been very innovative. They find a way to do things. They connect well with people. They do not fear getting on a plane and traveling to the other side of the planet to meet people and to connect. And I think that's a really great thing about our country, our people, and our culture, is that we are looking forward to the future. We do enjoy connecting and telling people about the great country we have down here in the bottom of the world. So for all of those of you that are listening, now the borders are open up. We welcome you back to New Zealand to come and see us and see what we have to offer as a country.
Yeah, I would love to visit New Zealand. I'm afraid that if I go there, I might love it so much I might never leave. So I don't know if you're taking new people, but I don't know. I'd like to check it out. But speaking of the future, can we sort of close with vision of the future for Carrfields? Where do you go from here?
Yeah, look, I mean, as I probably said, in the last sort of statement was, we are excited about the future and the future of agriculture. I mean, we see farming is actually the future. to some of the global challenges that we have, and that we can grow mostly, we can grow everything we need from farms. And so as we look forward at Carrfields, we're continuing to look at how we innovate, how we develop products that consumers will buy, how we have that point of difference of traceability, sustainability, quality assurance that customers want and customers expect. So for us, it is about just that further investment into our business with technologies and innovation. But more importantly, it's getting out there in the world and connecting our products with global customers and partnering with people around the world that we can, we can share, or we can learn from. So yeah, we're really excited about the agriculture sector, not just in New Zealand, but also globally, but also really excited around the opportunity agriculture can play in this decarbonisation of our planet. So
a huge role.
Huge role. Yes. So look, no, I mean it's onward and upward. We carry on. We continue to focus and learn and celebrate the successes.
Excellent. Well, Craig Carr from Carrfields in New Zealand, thank you so much for your time today.
Awesome. No, thank you very much. And look forward to next time we connect.
All right, we did it. We got to the end of the show. Thank you for listening to today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got questions or comments or concerns or anything you want to send to me, please do. You can send an email. Send it to podcast@lancasterfarming.com. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online. Get yourself a subscription to our print edition. You won't regret it. You will love it. So anyway, I got to get out of here. There's a ton of stuff I have to do yet, and I'm sure you're busy too, so get back to work. All right, until next time, I will see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
Season 2, episode 35 of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2022 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written, recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock. The music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.